Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Joint City County Shared Services Committee. My name is Chris. I'm the city clerk. Before we get started, we have to do the election of the chair and the vice chair. So at this point forward, I would like to ask if there's any nominations from the committee for a chair. Scully.
I would like to nominate Councillor Kyle as chair.
Okay. Do you have a seconder?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion is carried. Chair Kyle,
You must have really wanted it first.
you can go ahead and conduct the election of the vice chair if you wish.
All right, so opening the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I'm John Sless.
Nice to meet you, John.
You as well. I nominate Rose Sicoli.
Any seconder for?
Yep.
Any further nominations? Okay, we will, all nominations close. Those in favor?
We have a chair and vice chair.
Got this. Okay, so roll call. I guess from Brantford.
Yeah, through the chair, roll call's been taken. Everyone's here.
Perfect. Okay, any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Okay, so we do have one delegation for this afternoon's meeting. So I'd like to call upon the representatives from the Brantford Regional Real Estate Association Government Relations Committee. So you do have 10 minutes allotted time, including questions. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Davis, Mayor Bailey, distinguished members of the Joint Services Committee. My name is John Odie, and I'm chair of the Brantford Regional Real Estate Association, or BREA's Government Relations Committee. I'm joined today by my colleague, David Dominicus, president of the Brantford Regional Real Estate Association. BREA represents over 500 real estate salespeople, brokers, and brokerages here in Brantford and Brant County. Our association is proud to work with local officials and elected leaders to advocate for stronger communities and more attainable housing for residents. We are here today to congratulate you on your reestablishment of the Joint Shared Services Committee and urge you on behalf of the committees where our members live and work to continue your important work. The reestablishment of the committee has come at a very important time in the history of Brantford and Brant County. Our region is growing and fast. People from across the world are coming to Brantford and Brant County because it's a fantastic place to live, work, start a business, and raise a family. While growth brings with it great potential, it also brings challenges. These are the challenges we urge this committee to continue to tackle head on. Challenges like transportation, better transit, and housing. We cannot, for example, build a prosperous Brantford and Brant without effective transportation connections to our neighboring communities. Businesses and citizens need effective transportation corridors in all directions, north, south, east, and west. This community should continue to work on the development of an effective and safe route north to the 401 should be a priority. Additionally, the expansion of the GO service in our region will give our community better access to the economic and other opportunities that exist in the greater Toronto and Hamilton areas. I'll now pass things over to David.
Okay, am I focused?
Hear me okay? So on transit, we must acknowledge that where people live, work, and play aren't defined by municipal boundaries. Enhancing transit across Brantford and Brant boundaries will open up the door to more economic opportunities and better qualify the life of all residents. Finally, on housing, Brantford and Brant County should continue to explore ways that it can align policies and reduce red tape on development. Take, for example, Councillor Oakley's motion passed just last week at the Brant County Council on the creation of a multiplex zoning bylaw. Given the county is moving ahead with this progressive change, Brantford should start its own work to permit more missing middle housing and as a right across the city and not just along transit corridors. If we don't align housing and development policy, we face the regressive outcome of being able to build. We face a regressive outcome of being able to build more affordable housing on one side of the municipal boundary and not on the other. Brantford and the county can work more closely together to build and develop more housing options for families to give our region an edge in attracting skilled labor and businesses who cannot afford to live and work in places like Toronto or Peel Region, for example. To close, we'd like to acknowledge the remarkable achievements of the Joint Shared Services Committee during its previous tenure, which includes the formation of a joint master plan implementation working group and the success the city and the county have had in building geared to income housing, reducing the wait list from 1,700 to 950 over the last year. A huge help to some of the most vulnerable in our community. This accomplishment underscores the potential for positive outcomes in the future, and we are excited to see more great work in the months ahead. Once again, on behalf of the Brantford Regional Real Estate Association, congratulations and thank you for your important work. At BREA, we stand ready to support you and the work of this committee. Thanks again, and we are able to happily take any questions you have.
Anyone have any questions for our delegation? Seeing none? We thank you for taking the time to come and speak with us.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
So that moves us on to item 5.1, which is the joint city county shared service opportunities. So looking for any discussion on that report.
I'll start, because why not?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I guess this question would be directed towards CAO Hutchings. It looks like he put this together because your name's on it. When we're looking at sort of the big picture items that we're going to be exploring as shared services, can you tell me, is physician recruitment included in any of those categories? Would it be shared procurement, or is that something I can leave with you to?
It's like, if I can add through you, Madam Chair, to the committee. We had our senior leadership team met and we put in a bunch of suggestions. Physician recruitment was on that list, but then we kind of made it shorter. We didn't want to throw 100 things at the committee, or I'm exaggerating. Large amounts. We shortened it up, but it was on that discussion. In our earlier discussions with the mayor and the Mayor Davis and myself had with Mayor Bailey and CEO Newton, we did bring up physician recruitment, and we weren't too sure if the county would want to have that discussion this early in it, because the county also, as Mayor Bailey said to us, is recruiting physicians from the Cambridge area and other areas, not just a Brantford locale. So we kept that off the list for now, but we're more than open to have that discussion. This committee directs us to do so.
Okay. So do you need committee direction to add that to the list? Or is it something we can look at down the road?
We would need committee to, this list right now is what staff jointly will be working on. So we would need that direction to add that to the list. Yes.
So then I would like to offer an amendment that we add physician recruitment as something that we're looking at to the list, and I'll require a seconder. And the reason that I am adding it to the list is because I know that as I sit on the physician recruitment task force, I just had a meeting with them 2 days ago. And they're gonna be requiring funding from the city to hire a full-time recruiter, and it's my understanding that the county is also doing that. It just seems like it might be worth us exploring that duplication of service. That's all. There might be some cost efficiencies on both sides by exploring that. And I don't mean to put the county on on the spot, but I just thought it's worth looking at. Maybe there's some cost savings there. So I do need a seconder still, if anyone's interested. Thank you.
Chair, we just need to have the main motion.
Oh, it's not even on the floor yet.
Mover and a seconder, and then,
Okay,
I'm jumping the gun.
so if you'd like to.
okay, can we get someone to
Okay.
move? to
There
this
we go.
and Council Pullman? So now,
Now I've introduced my amendment.
Yeah,
Pretend I
now-
just said it again.
discussion,
Discuss.
on the amendment.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the CEO, both CEOs. So we have your report, we have these issues listed. Can you give us kind of summary, what happens from here? What will the two CEOs do with we accept the report? And where does it go from here? And what will be, I assume part of that will be analysis of those issues. And, what parameters will you use when looking at those issues as staff?
You go first or?
Sure, I think I would be looking at some prioritization, Mr. Mayor, of those items, just recognizing resources that both municipalities, we'd be looking to this committee for some prioritization of that list. And certainly we would return back within a designated timeframe with further information.
So I can through you, Madam Chair. Ditto, I think that's what we're looking at. The direction from this is we want to get a list, number one today, what we want to move forward on. And number two, what Allison, CEO, county and myself would do is, the direction is we'd come back with a prioritization and timeline to those things. And then we said, for instance, if I just pick one right from the top, animal control. We said, okay, we're gonna bring that back in Q2 of 2024. We would bring back an analysis on how we could share services on animal control in Q2, but we'd come back first with a list. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this one by Q2 or this one by Q3. And then we come back with analysis and have that discuss this table and how we could work together on joint services regarding animal control.
Okay, so the prioritization, we would ultimately would oversee that as a committee. And then make recommendations for council. Would you see that happening at the second meeting of the committee?
Exactly. That's what this is recommending. This first thing is you come up with a list. Second, we come back with a list of prioritization. We think we can do this one first, second, third, and when they would come back. And then that's your second committee, basically deciding on, does that meet your priorities? Is this higher priority? Is it lower priority?
Okay. So today what we're doing then is, if we think there's something else you should look at, we would move an amendment, such as what Councilor Sikoli has done.
Yes. To Madam Chair.
My last question to you is, so is this a city committee? Is it in terms of the admin support and where we'll meet? Is it just the city? Is it city county? Will we go back and forth? How will that work?
I think it was discussed at our joint meeting back in the summer that the county would appreciate our clerking support, which we have our clerk here through this, but we would look at doing it back and forth through municipality if the county so accepted that we would go to their county but our clerk would do the clerking.
Okay, so we could have a second meeting in the county council chambers, but with the clerking support from the city. Does that work?
Hopefully we can set the technology to do it, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Kevin asked some of the questions I would have asked. I think understanding the basis for prioritization is important because ultimately what might be important to one party may not be as important to another. So somehow or other we could have a mechanism that brings those two pieces together. I think it's important that we have a comprehensive list, and like Councillor Secoli, I've got one to add to that, but I need to ask a question before that. There are many things that today we already work as a joint body, social services, paramedics, don't know. So I'm assuming that we just put those to one side. We're not going to bring them into the fold of this. So quick nod from somebody, Brian or Alison? Yeah. Okay, so the one that I'm uncertain about and would like to add if there is uncertainty remaining is the airport. It's one of those interesting things where we collect the taxes and you own it. And I think it's such an amazing opportunity for us to develop that would be one that I would like to add to this list. Now, I know there is a committee that they already exist, but my understanding is it's not very effective. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I understand it's not very effective. So I think we have a real opportunity here to put some life and energy into what could be a very, very big opportunity for both the city and the county. And so if I could get a seconder for that, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Brian.
Any further discussion?
If I recall, Councilor Miller introduced the resolution amendment at your council to consider things like events. And I can't recall what the wording was, but I'd like to capture that today as well. The city of Brantford is doing a municipal accommodation tax, which is going to provide us with some significant funding to be able to do those types of things, and there aren't any borders when it comes to that. So I'd like to introduce, maybe can help you out with the wording in terms of how we amended our resolution. Speak to that.
In terms of what, through the chair, in terms of what we changed, the wording?
Yeah, when we added at our council the same wording that Councilor Miller's council supported, that he added, I don't recall what the wording was.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I believe the wording was shared interests between the county and the city. That was very broad, as you mentioned. We need to include events, tourism, economic development, those types of examples.
It practically writes itself.
But she's
Tourism, events, what else, Allison? Sorry.
economic development.
Yeah.
Through the chair, just to speak to one of the amendments.
One sec,
Oh.
we have a seconder for,
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay,
go ahead.
anyways, through the chair, to speak to one of the amendments, which would be in regards to the recruitment position board. So I voted in favor of us having our separate board. It was brought up at that committee meeting engaging in joint service. That being said, I will support the amendment. I think it's worth having the discussion. Just to bring up our concerns initially on why we went our separate way with that is there's somewhat more of a disparity in lack of positions in the county versus the city. We had concerns that if it was a combined board, we might not make up that gap as quickly, which is why we currently have a separate one to make up that gap. And then the idea would be that we go forward and talk to the city, but I think it's worth engaging and discussing as part of this, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's on the floor? There's about 3 or
I
4
know.
amendments.
Yeah,
What is on the floor?
Through the chair, we should really deal with the amendments as they come up.
Yes.
So we shouldn't be really introducing amendments without disposing of the original one. So currently, procedurally, the position recruitment amendment is on the floor.
So what does that mean? What's on the floor?
We have physician recruitment.
yeah. The Resistor recruitment is on the floor at the moment.
That's it, and that's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Through the chair, shall we call the question on the amendment then, if there's no further discussion on it?
Do that. All those in favor of the amendment to add.
Through the chair, the next amendment was the airport.
The airport is now on the floor, so.
Yeah, through Madam Chair, I think it's an excellent idea to have the airport. I just want the county members to know that we're almost finishing a visioning exercise for the airport. And part of that is probably going to include looking at having the airport operated through Municipal Services Corporation, following the great example provided by leadership by the county, how you can use municipal service corporations. We think that would give us more flexibility in terms of how it's operated, but also make it much easier and could facilitate the county becoming a part owner through issuance of shares, which is much simpler than trying to figure out title to a property. So happy to see it added. It may, however, not be a top priority item for the committee because of some of the things we're doing, getting ready for it to become a top priority.
Any further discussion on the airport?
We looking for a seconder or were you?
No, it's already been
It's on,
seconded.
it's been seconded? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I get, all I would ask is, there is a commission that oversees the operation of the airport, and they shouldn't be ignored through this process. They should be consulted in some manner. And get their thought and input on us moving forward with this and how they would see things emerging. So I think it's important that they not be overlooked.
I could make a comment about the airport. I mean, in our official plan, the official plan that hopefully will get signed off not too long from now, there is an intention to take land to the west of the airport. So, as Mayor Davis says, you're busy visioning things. Are you visioning the inclusion of lands that we are visioning being part of something for the airport? It strikes me that that is a topic that ought to be brought forward to this table for consideration before we finalize the visioning. Otherwise, I think the spirit of what we're trying to do here kind of evaporates.
Further discussion on the airport? Councilor Collins?
I'm just,
Go ahead.
oh,
Lady
sorry.
first.
Go right ahead.
Go ahead. Lady first.
I'm looking at, Councilor Samuel and I sit on the city's economic development committee, tourism, cultures initiatives, so the airport falls under that. I'm just actually looking at, so we just received a report last week, which is actually a new economic development strategy, which includes the airport, and so I agree that I think we need to all be on the same page in terms of whether it's visioning or how the airport fits into probably both of our economic development strategies. But we've got 2 weeks, which is one of the reasons that I asked for time to provide feedback on the report from the consultant regarding the economic development strategy. So I think it's timely that if we're going to add the airport to considerations for this committee, but that information also feeds back through to the economic development level here. The impact, obviously, I think both county and city staff work plans in terms of economic development strategy. So that's all I gotta say on the airport. And then we'll talk economic development as through. And I'm gonna apologize through you because I can see Brian looking at me now.
I don't have my glasses on.
Well,
You're blurry right now.
I'm sure everybody's thinking, okay, we started out with a list of 9, now we're at 12, but anyway,
We had a list of 22 of staff, so we narrowed it down.
yeah, and that was actually gonna be my question once the original resolution gets tabled as to what we pared down to get to 9, but anyway, okay, so, anyway, that's my comments on the airport amendment.
Councilor Coleman?
Hey, Madam Chair, and I fully support that we get something going on the airport. I sat on the airport board for a dozen years or so or better, and it seems to be that we were always sitting, spinning our wheels. Wings would go out, but we never got off the ground. And kept talking and talking and talking, and they own this, we collect the taxes of this, it needs to move forward, so I fully support your amendment, John.
Further discussion on the airport, before we call the question? All right, so I'll call the question on adding the airport to the list. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so then we had, the next amendment was the events, tourism, what was the wording on that one? Shared interest. So,
It was shared interest, tourism, events, and economic development.
perfect. Okay, any discussion on that one? Because it was second, right, that one?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Counselor Hutton.
And that, so through you too, so from this city's perspective, it's economic development, tourism, and culture initiatives. And that's the report that we have 2 weeks to provide feedback on to the committee before it comes to city council. So there would be a bunch of stuff, I guess, that would fall under the umbrella of tourism, culture.
Any further discussion on that one?
Could somebody explain it a little further?
Yeah, who was that put that one on the,
I think it was Councilor McCreary.
It was me, yes.
yeah,
Is this the room tax we're talking about?
I can answer Councilor Sless's questions when it's my speaking opportunity.
I'd appreciate it if you did. Thank you, ma'am.
go ahead, please.
In response to a comment just received from another member of the committee, let me say this about that, the Corporation of the City of Brantford has been directed by its council to enact a municipal accommodation tax, which will do what other communities do by way of collecting a stipend from everyone who stays in a hotel room in the City of Brantford's environs. We are then able to apply 50% of that to internal works and 50% to support what one could consider to be a crown corporation of sorts, which is a third-party standalone organization administered by its own board, which then would disseminate spending at the other 50% of those revenues, less, of course, what we spend in the collection to a third party. So we have the opportunity now to create significant municipal and, if this passes today, intra-municipal events, such as some of the things you see going on in the City of Brantford, paid by third parties now. Some of what you see in the County of Brant paid by third parties. It allows us as City of Brantford, and hopefully as City County, to begin to develop some really cool events and activities that we can create, sponsor, and that will in turn provide joy to our residents and attract people from away to come and enjoy what we have to offer in both cities. Sorry, both municipalities. So the short answer is yes.
Okay.
That was a long answer.
Can I get the floor again?
Yeah.
Now that it's not answered the question that I didn't ask him. What I don't understand is there should, if we're moving something forward, there should be value to both sides. Right? I see value to the county. I don't see value to the city. The money's all being generated in the city and then being spent in the county, if I understand. Was that the intent? Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'll give up the floor.
Go ahead.
But I think to Councillor Miller's commentary about us sharing in things we do now and you do now, things that are, public events and public celebrations. As it stands now, the City of Brantford has that pool of money, but there's no reason that the county can't share in that, perhaps financially, perhaps in terms of appointing people to the board of the third party organization that will help determine the 50% of the money that goes to the third party. And there may be a cross benefit other than financial that we can enjoy in terms of being able to do those things. So certainly the city and county can both share financially in it, but we can both share in terms of the undefinable, untangible things that make life so much better.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to try and broaden the subject, I don't think Councillor Miller, and I'll speak for him, and he's not here. But I think he was sitting next to me when he said it. He wasn't thinking about this particular tax. I think he was thinking more broadly than that. I'll give you an example. The 2023
over 55 summer games, which was a joint effort between city and county, incredibly successful. We both contributed, we had venues, I think we both benefited from it. So it's an expansion of that thought, not necessarily a thought about taxation. So if we can broaden that subject, and it may run into economic development, it might be that we hold a jazz festival here, I don't know you do, but it might expand out into the county as well, just as an example.
Further discussion on this one? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question on adding the special interest. What was the shared interest? All those in favor?
Oh, I have a question. So just want clarification on what we're voting on. So it's the broader topic like was just discussed? Is that what we're voting on now to add?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all those, yeah,
If I might just clarify, what I introduced was an example of what it could be, okay? It's not all about the money. It's about what Councillor Bell said and what Councillor Miller said.
all those in favor of adding that one? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, are there further discussion or items to be, yeah, Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and seeking a seconder, it's just come to light that Mayor Davis and I were at a meeting on Friday at the GRCA, that there's a possibility of Apps Mill, which is located in the county, maybe potentially closing due to funding, GRCA and whatnot like that. So I would like to see if we get that introduced as an amendment and see where it goes.
A seconder, Mayor Davis. Okay, discussion.
I guess I'm gonna need a little more clarity on what we would be reviewing specifically to Apps Mill, like it's specific to Apps Mills or it's more trails and nature? Like, I guess I see Mayor Davis chomping at the bit to add to that, so I just need more clarity on what this is and specifically what we would be reviewing.
So using my speaking turn, answering that question. So this came out rather unexpectedly at the GRCA board meeting that Councillor Coleman and myself attended, well, Councillor Miller, on Friday morning, and it has to do with, trying to keep it short. The province a year or two ago changed the way in which the conservation areas are financed. They've now changed into three categories. Category is mandatory, which are mandatory program for all the municipalities in the watershed receive a levy from the GRCA. That's called mandatory. And then there's category 2 expenses, which are expenses for all municipalities in the watershed agree they'll share, but not mandated by legislation. Then there are a third category that are called other expenses that are now required to break even and cannot be added into a municipal levy unless there's municipality agrees to make it part of what are called category 2 expenses. So anyways, it's all has to do with the conservation education program, which is an extensive program run by the GRCA, brings in students, and they attend one of 4 centers where they learn about nature by being in nature. And one of the 4 centers is Apps Mills. And in order to make the program break even, the proposal on the floor was a lot of virtual learning and going to the schools rather than the kids coming out to the centers, Apps Mills being one of them. And so the elected officials on the board were quite concerned about that, thinking that could lead to the closure of Apps Mill because it's primarily used for that purpose. And so we had it deferred for 3 months. And in the meantime, representatives of the GRCA will be speaking to area municipalities. What's their position? So this is, I suspect will require a response from the elected officials in this area, and probably best if we do that together jointly. So I think it's an excellent issue to be added, or something that we have staff look at. There's not a lot of information right now. It came up as agenda item, whatever it was, buried in the GRC agenda on Friday. And hopefully a lot more information is going to be brought forward in the detailed discussions GRCA will have with our staff. But I think it's going to come down to whether some or all the municipalities in the watershed will agree to pay more to the GRCA to keep the program running in its current format, which is bringing schools to one of these centers rather than staff going into schools. So, there's a lot of questions about it, which we had, which are waiting to be answered. But
just to Councillor Sokoli's question, which I can answer without taking up a speaking opportunity. So you asked a great question. It's a really good question, because where I'm struggling right now is jurisdiction.
Yeah.
This is a shared services between us and the county. GRCA's, if the GRCA does download it, then we should have a discussion about how we shared service it. But if they don't download it, it's kind of outside the jurisdiction of this. So it's a little bit chicken and egg. That's what I'm struggling with right now, Councillor. So if they are looking to rid themselves, I think I was godsmacked when the mayor told me about this on Saturday when we had lunch together on Saturday. And if it was, we definitely have some discussion about shared services, but right now, yeah, I don't know how to handle it. I'm struggling. So.
Councillor Scully?
Yeah, so that's kind of where my brain is struggling to piece this together, because there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen here, and I'm wondering if we could paint this with maybe a little more of a broad brush, but still, it would still fall under the category of maybe trails or our trail system. And no, seeing a lot of disdain coming from that end of the table. Just merely suggesting that maybe we there's another way to make sure that we're still working on this without being so specific to it. And I'll drop that on the table for discussion.
Okay, we'll go Mayor Davis, and then I think Councillor Chambers and Mayor Bailey.
just so people understand it, it's not a question of downloading the service. It will be done by the GRCA. It's the GRCA saying, because the province is telling us now this has to break even, we've got to make these changes to our program. And by making those changes, it'll reduce the scale of the program and probably much reduce the need for these nature centers. And so what the municipalities can do, if they're interested, they can agree to, because like right now, last year, the cost of running those centers was part of the general levy to all the municipalities, because the province changed that. It could no longer be added by the GRCA, the cost of that program, or part of the cost, into the municipal levies. So the issue is really not so much the city providing the service or the county, but whether we want to pay more money to the GRCA to keep the program running in its current format, which would have it taking place in else. So I think it is appropriate that it be an issue that the city and the county discuss this evening to come to the joint position. Hope that explains it.
Councillor Chambers?
No, just maybe complicate things. The city may not be aware that the county is served by 2 conservation authorities. And the exact same thing is happening with Bacchus Education Center with Long Point. And the county is in discussions with Norfolk County and Halton County, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the same issue is duplicated in the county, and the county may wish to maybe kind of talk about that on its own in terms of our joint responsibilities to both conservation authorities before we get into it here. So I'm suggesting that perhaps that's something that can be set aside for now, and once we get a better handle on what we're doing at the county with Long Point and GRCA, to bring it to this committee. So I'd like to just kind of set that aside at this point to get it sorted out at the county.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm thinking the same way. We don't have the same interest as the city with the conservation areas, and we do pay a ton now. And I think we're a little bit premature. I don't think it's a joint service thing until it is. The province has a lot of decisions to make before it's a joint services like this. I think we both stand alone on conservation. And I think COVID has jaded the numbers and the figures and the activity at Apps Mill, along with a lot of other mills, because it's coming off of a 3-year. Nobody goes to anywhere kind of a deal, so the numbers are down. I'm not sure where they're getting their information from, because there has been no information the last few years. So I think it's premature and I can't support it.
Councillor Hunt and then Councillor West.
Yeah, so I was going to agree that I think one specific facility, being Apps Mill, is probably maybe too narrow for the work of this committee, if that's the way to describe it. And I think my other thinking was that we just introduced an amendment that says we can consider shared interests. And so something like Apps Mill could eventually fall under the umbrella of shared interest versus being a specific item on the list.
It sounds to me like there's not enough information known at this time. And I don't know who to check with, maybe Brian, but this isn't a definitive list. At any point, this list could be altered and added to or taken from, or whatever we have to do to refine it to make it make sense. But I guess what I would ask our reps is, I think what I heard you say, Kevin, was they've cut this from the general levy and now it doesn't have funding. It is, in a nutshell, I think what I heard.
By virtue of provincial rate.
So if it's been cut for the general levy, would our savings from that not fund operating?
That's a good question.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Our list already includes sport and recreation. I don't see any need to further refine it to name a specific facility, but we're aware now, and staff can come back to the committee and talk to us about this, and maybe there's a specific action we'll take later. So I'm not sure we need the amendment today, as we already have the broadcast party.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with what Councilor McCurry and Councilor Hunt said. It could go under sports and recreation, special interest or whatever. I think the point we were trying to make was, we just wanted to make councils aware of what could be coming down the road. This caught both Kevin, Councilor Miller, and myself completely off guard. We did not know about it. And I think the big thing was, when staff said, GRCA staff said they've been talking to the municipal staff, we kind of felt left out. So this is why it got brought forward. So I can withdraw the amendment. It can fit into sports rec, special interest or whatever. I think we wanted to make sure everybody was aware of what could happen.
Any further discussion on that one, or Councillor?
I'll withdraw the amendment.
Withdraw that?
Yep.
That's okay, he can do that?
Yep.
To the chair, so a seconder agrees, which
Yes.
is Mayor
This- I don't agree.
I mean, it's.
All the Okay, so then, is there anything else that folks would like added to the list, or any discussion on what was already previously added to the list? Yep, Councillor Sleth.
Just, I'm not really clear on process. The items that are listed, at 9 or 12, whatever we're at now, are they in any priority now, or is that randomly?
They are no priority at the moment. We will bring back the next meeting. We will bring back a list with a priority. So when we'll be addressing them, and bring back a report on each one of them.
So Brian, then will that define what number 1 is and what number 12 is? Okay, that. it won't be bringing back, and will it also, I guess, include, the analysis on number one? And then these are the ones to follow, or will this
No.
just prioritize?
If number one's, sorry, if I can through,
Yep.
if, so it'll bring back a list. And say this is our number one priority, we want to do this in Q1, first January 2024. And we'll have that list. And then if number one is so easy, we can knock it off, we may just do that, but I would doubt it. We'll just have, next meeting is really just saying, this is our priority, we feel. Again, animal control is the first thing and most important thing we should be dealing with. You guys agree with that, and really prioritization exercise the next meeting.
Okay,
We may have a few things we can knock off early, but we'll see if we can find some low hanging fruit.
Debbie?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, Madam Chair, who's going to put those in order? You and Allison, is that?
With discussion with our staff, yeah, yes.
So it has nothing to do with this committee, just its staff.
We'll be bringing it back, so through Madam Chair, we'll be bringing it back to make sure the committee agrees with the priority we put it in, yes.
Because some of these are, as you just said, are much easier to do and check off than the other things. But you're gonna do that, Brina, and we're gonna then decide whether your list is right or not.
And it may not be in priority, maybe some things we can just knock off early and which we can get done early.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think there is some merit in having some early wins. I'm using terminology which I don't hear much in the municipal, but in the private world, that would be a term that we would use. But I think we'd also want to know on what basis you prioritize. So I have not heard anybody say what the criteria would be for prioritization. And I think there is an expectation, and it's certainly true in the chambers of commerce, both the Brantford Chamber of Commerce and the Paris Chamber of Commerce. You heard it from the BRREA, that there's an expectation of something substantial coming out of this. So whilst we may have some nice, easy things to do, I think we should challenge ourselves as a group to deal with something that actually has significance and scale and will be recognized by the community as, boy, they've done something really difficult, but helping both communities. So as you work, Brian and Alison, to tell me how you prioritize, if you could, in your report, you can say what your criteria for prioritization would be, that would be really, really helpful.
And although this is our list, as we discovered in the last iteration of shared services, things may come up from time to time, which we can act on quite quickly. For last time, for instance, I believe it was the fire emergency operations issue that we shared a staff member on because that opportunity presented itself. So this isn't the final list by any means, it's simply the list that we proceed on today. And I don't thank you both for introducing the two analogies that I hate the most. The low-hanging fruit and the quick wins, but sure we have that, but one of the failings of governments at all levels is tending not to look at, as our friends in the South might say, 7 generations removed. There may be things that we could consider as two communities that may take us perhaps 5 or 10 years to recognize, perhaps longer. And we should make sure that we identify those long-term opportunities, which may not be on the table today, but at some point in time, the two communities should consider much farther down the road than this committee will be dealing with this year. Thank you.
Councilor Oakley?
Through the chair, I just wanted to comment that I believe we've kind of strayed away from talking about the amendment on the floor. If we could call the question on that amendment, then we can get back to the prioritization conversation perhaps.
Through the chair, right now we're discussing the main motion as amended.
Did we? Okay, I wasn't sure if we actually.
Which one's still on the floor though?
Yeah, I thought it was still on the floor.
I thought you withdrew.
It was withdrawn.
No, it's withdrawn.
No, the seconder didn't.
Yeah, so we still have to vote on that, I believe.
Our procedural bylaw allows for the move and the seconder if they agree to withdraw their motion.
What if the
At any time.
seconder doesn't?
If the seconder doesn't, then it's still on the floor.
So we have to vote.
Okay, All right then, so we better call the question on the GRCA one then. So I guess the amendment is still to add it to the list, correct? Okay, so all those in favor of that one? Okay,
To a second.
opposed?
No, it includes over my dead body. I do think it's already included in certain items.
Okay, okay, so now we're back to discussion on the main motion here. Counselor,
Through the chair, just in terms of our prioritization conversation, I just wanted to put sort of towards staff in regards to our prioritization. I think we've heard unanimously from both BRIA, the Paris District Chamber of Commerce and the Brantford Branch Chamber of Commerce, transit and transportation being a major key player. So I imagine that will be an important one. And I would also just like to back up Councillor McCreary. And I think we should, while the quick wins will be nice, focus on our long-term goals and long-term priorities. As I agree, oftentimes we do fall into looking what we can accomplish within a term when we should be looking 20, 25 years ahead.
discussion. Ready?
Yeah, speaking to the resolution as amended, I want to congratulate everybody for all of us attending in person this meeting. And I think it goes to show that as members of our respective councils, we're really committed to making this work. And it won't necessarily be easy. I'm sure there'll be issues that we deal with that require us to deal with one another with the greatest amount of respect and collaboration, knowing that we're doing something good for our communities. And that is moving us forward to hopefully having in place some services we don't even have right now. For example, transit between here and St. George and Paris. I think there's so much potentially great things that come out of this committee. I think we've had a very good and positive first meeting. It's I think going to be a real benefit to the staff because we saw with the last council what they were able to do working together, Silky Services. But I knew that they were a little bit reluctant or hesitant to go beyond that because they weren't sure what the elected officials thought about doing that. And now I think for the staff, it means a lot of work for them, but at least they know moving forward that they have the support of many of us, that it's an important exercise and that they have our full support to begin that process and give us the kind of information that only staff can give us that allow us to make some really good decisions moving forward. I just want to say, it's not every meeting I feel at the end of it that optimistic. Sometimes I can feel rather pessimistic, but I'll say here, I'm feeling very optimistic and it'll be incumbent upon all of us to keep it moving forward in a positive manner. I think we can do it. That's it.
Yeah, so through you to staff, we're again at a very timely, so I'm looking at an email from Mike Spicer, our Director of Fleet and Transit Service, inviting City Council to participate in a transit optimization study engagement. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate for that study to be opened up to this committee or to county council as well.
Short answer is yes. If I would, obviously go away from this meeting, want to see how this meeting turned out and it's listed on the list and it stays on the list, I would ask Mike to see if there's any ability to have some discussion with county and Mike's timeline is probably over a 4 or 5 month timeline. I would sit with Allison after that. And so this is what we could do and deliver and this is what we would bring back, any optimization. And to Councillor Bell's earlier comments, in our terms of reference, doesn't give priorities, but it kind of does. It talks about shared service focus on, improved financial conditions for both municipalities and improved services to residents, as well as it can be delivered by one municipality to the other, or with the two municipalities and delivered. Already shared, so there already is kind of priorities built in our terms of reference already we would use to score. Next, answering two questions at one time, but I'll make sure. So the short answer is yes. You have those discussions with county councilors, as well as some of the areas in the county if there's interest in transit.
Yeah, so I'm literally looking at his emails, looking to arrange 30-minute Zoom meetings to hear what our constituents so providing. So obviously, city councilor constituents, but it would make sense that county councilor constituents have some input into the work of transit optimization as well. Anyway, so
We would consider that, yes, if
good time.
if there's willing voice at the other end of the phone, we would consider that, yes.
Counselor Celeste?
No, I think Brian just answered it. I didn't know whether you needed direction.
Gabrielle?
Just through you, Madam Chair, speaking to what Mayor Davis just said, he's optimistic. I'm not quite as optimistic. Just because we do things a little differently at the county. We're using your clerk, and apparently, I hope we're not using all of your rules. We don't cut people off when they're speaking, and we don't tell them that they've gone beyond their time, and we don't act like that. And I hope that if this is going to truly be a joint services, I hope that those kinds of things aren't going to happen moving forward, because to be equal is to recognize how we do business as well as how you do business, and the bylaws and the procedures attached to both of them. So just a concern that I have moving forward.
Counselor Oakley?
Through the chair, just to staff, in regards to where we go procedurally, we're gonna presuming we pass this resolution as amended. Does that go to both councils? Do you just proceed before going to our councils? My concern with the way it's currently written, it's that the CAO of City of Brantford be directed to explore the shared services opportunities as outlined in the report, yada, yada. If this goes to our committee or our council, the County of Brant councils then directing City of Brantford CAO. I would like to suggest an amended wording of that the CAO of the City of Brantford and the CAO of the County of Brant be directed to explore the shared service opportunities, so on and so forth. Since it's going to both committees or both councils, that way we're not directing each other's staff directly.
Do you want to clarify?
Yeah, through the chair, it says that already, that a CEO of the City of Brantford be directed to explore shared service opportunities that outlined in the report with the CAO of the County of Brant, and return to the committee with the timeline for review and recommendations.
I suppose the language work I'm looking at here is that we're directing the CAO of the City of Brantford to then talk to what is, through the wording, an outside representative, the CAO of the County of Brant, as opposed to directing both of them. But if everyone else is happy with wording, I can live with it. It's just procedurally, it's a little odd for our council at the end of the month to be directing Mr. Hutchings.
Can I just respond to that? So it's kind of, I'm doing this is twice. I'm going to do this today. I'm going to answer two questions at the same time. So when we met in the summer, my memory was that you didn't have the resources, Mayor Bailey. So we offered our clerk to do this. I'm in charge of all the staff here. Okay. I can't tell my clerk to operate under two sets of rules. He's been hired as the clerk of the City of Brantford, and he has to follow the clerking rules of the City of Brantford. So and so when I wrote this report, now over to you, Councillor, I was writing as if almost like a social service committee report, you know, because it's in the confines of the city and it's going to go to the city. And I wrote it. That was my mindset when I wrote this report. So you are right, is directing me to do that, but to work with your CEO, because this council directs me and I figure this is going to this council. If this report, many times social service committee reports, we then send a copy over to the county, and we can do that, make it item C instead of the county, where you guys can do a motion to go to your council to direct your CEO to work with me to do the contra decision, do that. We could set up that way or something like that. But I just don't know. We're not structurally and under a corporation set up to to spear off two ways. I report, my fiduciary responsibility is to this council. Right, and so that's how I wrote it.
That makes sense.
So you see my dilemma that I'm in right here.
Yes.
So if we want to have a meeting outside the city and you want to have your clerk do it, we can do it that way and write the report that way. So we're just going through this awkward as how we report it. But at this point, I thought that was the agreement. We're more than willing. I'm sure Chris would say, sure, I'd like to take a night off and not clerk it, but you know, we could change the wording on how you want to do it. So.
Awesome. Yes, through the chair, to committee, we did ask, that the clerk, city of Brantford, these meetings just down to resources. I would also say procedurally, you're correct. We would get a copy of this to our clerk's department. We would amend that resolution that would go to our council, directing my activity through you.
With respect to rules and procedures, since we've done that rabbit hole. As with social services, we operate under City of Brantford's rules and procedures for this committee, as I understand it. And you and the county are not the lucky recipients of the type of scrutiny that we get in the city of Brantford. So if we stray from rules and procedures of the city of Brantford, quite often we end up with one of 3 or 4 folks in the community who see fit to then file a code of conduct complaint or an FOI, which costs the city of Brantford. Generally, the codes of conduct costs about $7,000 to $10,000, and the findings are not good, generally in our favor, always in our favor so far. So we have to be very careful not to stray from that, and that's why Chris rules with an iron fist. And we start at 4 o'clock when it's a 4 o'clock start. We start at 6 o'clock when it's a 6 o'clock start. But that's not to say we couldn't. It's not to say we couldn't play home and away games too. Now, if we're in the county's jurisdiction, there's no reason we can't abide by your rules, because we would be the guest team on the ice out there. But it is important to us not to get caught up in all this stuff that we get caught up in. I hope you guys understand that.
Yeah, following on Councilman Curry's sentiment, I'd hate to see us get caught up with procedural
Hindrances.
hindrances. And is it possible to, and maybe perhaps the chairs could think about doing this report to us the next meeting, to have this one meetings here in the city of Brantford with our rules, the next meetings in the county with county rules and county clerking. And I know it's really unusual, but let's face it, this is unusual, and we're breaking new ground. And I think we should try and be innovative and do whatever we have to do to make it work and be fair to all concerned.
Yes, thank you. I'd hate to see us go down a negative rabbit hole so quickly based on maybes and what ifs. And I'll remind everyone that we have a chair from the county who will be overseeing our meetings. So likely you'll just be reasonable with how we're communicating amongst ourselves here, and we're all adults and are capable of speaking openly and respectfully. On that, I do want to address perhaps a concern. So I'm going to add another amendment here. Number C, that letter C, that staff be directed to send a copy of this report to the county, just so that we have it documented that we're definitely going to be sending a copy of this your way, and you will have it. And I hope that we can all move forward with open hearts and open minds and put the past in the past. And I know I'm so much looking forward to working with you, Jennifer, and maybe we'll sit down and kind of figure out how we're going to navigate this on both ends in a way that makes everybody happy and feel supported and heard around this table. So my door is open, and you and I can chat after this meeting. So amendment on the floor, seconded by my good friend, Councillor Oakley.
Any discussion to the amendment that Councilor Scalia has introduced?
Could the clerk please read back the amendment?
That item 5.1 be amended to include the following as clause C, that staff be directed to send a copy of the recommendation and report to Brant County Council.
Thank you.
County of Brant Council.
Okay, any further discussion to this amendment?
Yeah.
Seeing none, I will call the question, adding C to the, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Councilor Sluss.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the two sets of rules. It's not fair to Chris to be conversant in both cities' policies and procedures. That's asking too much of one person who's already been asked to do a lot already. That doesn't make sense to me. If there's two people doing it and each one is from a different community, they would be familiar with the rules of that community, and that would be fine. But if one person's covering both communities, wherever that person resides or works, should be the rules that would prevail. Those are the rules that the clerk is familiar with. So to me, that makes sense. It would be very unfair to tell him to take a book away and memorize that as well. Doesn't make sense.
Councilor Oakley.
Through the chair, I'll agree with Councilor Sluss here. I was missing the bit of context that we had already had the conversation in regards to clerking, that we were lacking staffing facilities. I love the idea that Mayor Davis suggested of us going back and forth, but perhaps I can wait until such a time where our clerk's department has more staffing, more resources to do so. Until then, it does make sense for us to proceed under City of Brantford's rules, given that we're using the clerking staff.
Yeah, my intent was never to have two clerks. If that's how it appeared, if that's how it sounded, that was not my intent. My intent was that I want to have these meetings under a very calm, unsarcastic demeanor. You already said your meetings start on time, well, so do ours. And that was a very sarcastic thing to say. And I just want you to know that we have our rules to, and I don't want to ever be cut off when I'm speaking, and I've gone 2 minutes over my 10 minutes. I don't want someone to say, you have to stop speaking. I want to continue to speak until I'm finished. And it's not just me, I mean, everyone who's speaking. I watch your meetings. I mean, that's why they're on TV. So we can watch the way you do business. You can watch ours and see how we do business. And I'm just saying that I hope this committee moves forward respectfully and in a very concerned. I just don't want anything to go wrong just because of the temperature of the meeting. We shouldn't not do business because someone is being sarcastic or disrespectful or something, or cutting people off in the middle of an idea. So I'm saying I do watch your meetings, and I do know what goes wrong when they do. You can watch ours and see when they go wrong when they do, because they do. We're not perfect, but I'm just saying, we just don't need to be nasty just because our time is up and it's time to stop talking. And I really don't like that about, and we do see that at social services. Now, we're only at social services for 11 minutes, so we don't get to see a whole lot of your business. But we've been asked to stop talking in the middle of a sentence, and it's not really cool. I don't think as a committee, a joint service committee, to ask someone to stop in the middle of an idea. That was my concern. It wasn't to have two clerks or two sets of anything, or even two sets of rules. It's just, if we could just calm the demeanor right from the start, I think this committee will last longer and we'll get work done. That was my intent.
I find it very productive to have an unrestrained and unrestricted discussion that's to the benefit of both communities. And Mayor Bailey has introduced honesty into this discussion, and I think that's a worthwhile thing that we've got here. Two communities, the only headbutting we do is with elected officials. Staff get along, constituents get along. Most of them don't even know where the border is. So I'll hold my tongue, but as I said, I do appreciate frankness that I've heard, and yes, I will. Thank you, John Sluss. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, so what are we voting on here?
Through the chair,
Be nice.
the main motion as
The main
amended.
motion as amended. Okay, so last call for any further discussion before I go.
Can we get some sense from Brian and Alison for the timeline? The people will be asking how this meeting gone, there'll be an expectation of some action. When we'll be able to come back and lay out the joint plan, an ambitious joint plan with some early wins. I'll find some more language here. Low hanging fruit, but I think it is important that we, as I said, the expectation is high of this meeting. So let us not miss that opportunity. So when can we get back and with some actions?
I was hoping you would have it as a 2024 Christmas present sometime in early December.
2024.
2023. Sorry.
Freudian slip.
There goes my sarcasm. Sorry, 2023. Hoping we would, after this, we'd have a pretty good idea. We could, also I could form a chart, I would probably send over to her and then come up. And we're meeting the next week and have a discussion and have something, try to have another meeting a month from now and go over that list and prioritize and have something for December, or both our councils can approve before the Christmas break. Thank you.
Any last questions? Further discussion?
Sorry, I was just, Councillor Bell was asking for my. I think my
I was just wondering if you noted as well.
No, I think, I would agree with, CAO Hutchings. I think, that would be an opportune time, given us with the budget deliberations. So these may have some budget implications.
If I can add, in the meantime, we may, to Councillor Hunt's comment, you already may start getting some calls from some of our staff about transit optimization, things like that, we're called to see if there's any likelihood of that happening in the county or any interest in various wards. Okay.
May I ask, in the interest of intermunicipality cooperation, if we show this as a required
I just wanted to add something clarification for this table. We are entering into a new venture with a new transit service provider. So I think that provides a lot of opportunities, but it may delay that cooperative opportunity a few months.
Okay. Anything else before we hold questions? All right, so all those in favor of the resolution as amended? Any opposed? Okay. Good job. Unanimous.
Good start.
Okay, so moving on here. There are no consent items, there are no resolution. No notice of the motion, so that is bringing us to adjournment.